Welcome everyone to Cornell Cooperative Extension for our monthly consumer issue program. I'm Mike Danaher. I'm an Assistant Attorney General with the New York State Attorney General's Office. And I'm here monthly at Cornell Cooperative Extension to talk to you about several different consumer-related topics that come up throughout the year. Today's topic happens to be one of the biggies. It's one of the ones that our office receives a considerable number of complaints on each year. And this is the time of year that we start to get these types of complaints, and that is in relation to home improvement contracts. It's the time of year when people are starting to think about doing their improvements to their house, both inside and outside. So it's really an appropriate topic for us to speak about this time of year. Let's talk initially about the fundamentals of a home improvement contract. I think that you have to take the mindset that the definition of a home improvement contract is all encompassing. It involves all types of work that occurs at someone's home, whether inside or outside. The definition is so all-inclusive that it also can include driveways, landscaping, swimming pools, those sorts of things. There's a pretty broad definition of a home improvement contractor. Some would think, well, I only do it on the side. I only do a few of those a year, those sorts of things. However, the definition of a contractor is anyone who does home improvements with the total price of all jobs over a year of $1,500. So you can imagine that includes the person who just does a job for their friend. Actually could fall within it if the person who's doing the work does jobs totaling more than $1,500. And in this day and age, $1,500 doesn't go very far. And it's part of a statute, the law in New York, that has not been amended in a really long time. So that dollar amount historically has lost its value, so that it has brought it way down. In addition, it covers, even for those that are doing small jobs. So let's assume that you're someone who does work a couple of times a year for people, and in total all the jobs have added to more than $1,500, and then somebody contacts you and says, hey, I have this little thing that I need done at my house. I need to have a small item fixed or replaced at my house. If that job is in excess of $500, that also falls into, or is the type of job that is included in the home improvement contractor law. So if it's a $150 job, even for somebody who does $50,000 worth of home improvements, it doesn't fall within this statute. But anything above $500 would. And again, that statute hasn't been amended in a really long time. So $500, if anybody's undertaken any home improvement contract, any home improvement work, even doing it themselves, it's not too hard to meet the $500 threshold with the cost of lumber and materials and all that other things. So it's really a low threshold. It's a contractor who's done work for more than $1,500 in a year, and it involves jobs that are more than $500. It does not include cosmetics such as things that you bring in, like drapes. Somebody that is selling drapes or carpeting, that it wouldn't apply to the cosmetic things. And it doesn't include appliances. So if you buy a $600 washer, it doesn't apply to the appliance itself. And that makes sense, because most of the time you're going to get an appliance that has some type of warranty attached to it. It would include custom homes. So home improvement would be a custom-built home on land owned by the homeowner at the time of the contract. So if a homeowner owns a piece of land, they hire somebody, let's do a stick-built home, build it up to our dream home, that's actually a home improvement contract. and would fall within the statute. And actually the protections that are included with the home improvement contract law, I wouldn't think anybody would avoid those provisions if they were going to the extent of building a custom home. But again, it applies to any job that's over $500. First thing, most importantly, is that under the law, a home improvement contract, the things that we just talked about, must be in writing, and that puts the burden on the contractor. So for those of you that may be out there who are contractors doing work in excess of $500, and in total you've done jobs of $1,500 or more, including landscapers, if you are going to do a job in excess of $500, you must have a contract in writing. There are heavy penalties for violating that statute, so it would behoove everyone, consumer as well as contractor, to put these in writing. And it makes, irrespective of what the law says, it makes good sense. It makes sense. Put everything in writing. More problems crop up because of communication issues. I see the complaints come into our office each day, and I'll see a fair number of complaints in the home improvement realm where the whole underlying problem stems from a lack of communication between the homeowner and the contractor. So this law helps give some incentive to resolve that communication issue, which is put everything in writing. It's so much easier from a contractor's perspective as well as a homeowner's perspective to have everything in writing. So if the homeowner, let's say, says, well, the contractor didn't do this, that, or the other thing, it'd be so much easier if the contractor were to pull out the contract and say, this is what we agreed to. It didn't call for me to do what the homeowner is saying that I'm supposed to be doing. Likewise, the homeowner can pull out the contract and be able to say, oh, this is what's included. And in fact, the homeowner may say, you know, I want some additional things done. Make sure it gets put in writing. It's very simple to take out the contract and write something at the end that both parties can initial to prove that they both signed it, to add something. That way there's no questions when it comes time to raise an issue. So it really makes good sense. It's not just to protect the homeowner, it actually protects the contractor as well. So everything should be in writing. All change orders, if there's going to be a change, if the homeowner says to the contractor, you know, I want to change the banister that you're doing to this kind of thing. And then the contractor can say, oh yeah, I'll take care of it. And then nothing gets written down. And the problem occurs, going back to communication, the problem occurs when the contractor comes to the homeowner and says, okay, it's going to be another $800. And the homeowner's like, what? Why an additional $800? You say, well, that banister, you know, we changed the banister, we put different spindles in and the different kind of wood and all that stuff, and it's $800 more. And the homeowner said, well, you never told me that. It's just that we agreed that that was what was going to be done. I just assumed that it was all included in the price. How easy to have solved that problem by the contractor saying, yes, I can change that banister. Now, what you're asking for, the spindles are a little more expensive, the type of mirrors, it's going to be an additional $800. Let's put that in the contract. It would also give the homeowner time to say, whoa, wait a second, I guess maybe I didn't need that change made. But this way, the communication flows, all because we have the written contract. Now, this written contract, the law requires certain details to be included in it, which a lot would make sense. But many of which I've seen have been violated. One, people wouldn't even think this would be an issue, but it is. Name, address, and phone number of the contractor has to be on the contract. I have seen many, and I will tell you, I see it frequently in the situation where the contractor is the driveway paver going door to door, where they don't put their address in the contract. They just write an 800 number down, or they write some telephone number down. How are you going to ever find them? So the law requires that the name, address, and phone number of the contractor be in the contract. The contract must also contain dates when the job is to be started and to be substantially completed. We get a lot of complaints from people who have paid deposits. Doesn't even have to be significant, but paid deposits, expecting the contractor to start the job tomorrow or Monday. And all of a sudden the contractor doesn't show up. And then they send a letter to the contractor or try calling the contractor and say, hey, you didn't come today. And then he responds by saying, well, no, I wasn't supposed to come today. So the whole issue could be resolved, if you follow the law, by putting when the start date of the work is to begin and when it's to be substantially completed. The other end of that, we also get complaints saying, he started doing the work a month ago and it's still not done. I was under the impression it was a 3-day job and it's a month later. The contract is supposed to say when the job is to be started and to be substantially completed. Now, obviously, there can be situations when that end date can't be met for various reasons, but at least it's an approximate date when it's to be completed. And if it is not completed by that date, then the homeowner would have some remedies to get out of the contract. Also in the contract, it should have a description of the work that's going to be done, including materials to be provided. That has to be as specific as possible. I know it can't be exact sometimes, but it has to be as specific as possible. The contract also requires a notice to the homeowner that if the job isn't paid for as agreed, that the contractor can file a lien against the property to secure his payment. That's required. It's a notice of the lien law. If this is one of the bigger contracts that calls for a payment over a period of time, the contract must have the draw schedule included. Draw schedule meaning when are payments due and how much. Lots of times you'll see that it's based on percentage of completion or when certain things have been completed. If it's an addition on the house including a deck or something. Maybe when you'll often see that when the addition is framed, there's a certain percent down. When it gets framed, a certain percent. When the deck gets attached, a certain percent. So that it should detail when and how much each payment is due. Now, it must also include something that most contracts do not require, but it does in the home improvement realm, and it is a provision that a lot of people think is in every contract, but actually it's in very few contracts, one of which is home improvement contract, and that is the consumer has to receive a notice of right to cancel. It's a 72-hour notice, so 3 days. A 3-day notice of right to cancel must be included in the contract. Must be included in the contract. And it's important for contractors, all contractors that are out there, to include that in the contract because until the homeowner is given their 72-hour notice, it never expires. So if the job there's no 72-hour notice, the work goes through, job gets finished, the homeowner can say, I cancel, after all the work has all been done. That makes no sense for the protection of the contractor. That's why you must include it. You must include the notice of right to cancel, that the homeowner has 3 business days to cancel from the date of the execution of the contract. That's why it's also a good idea for contractors, get your contracts signed ahead of time before the day's work has started, because if you get the contract signed and don't start for 3 days, you put it, because you have to put the start date and the approximate completion date. Let's say you signed it on April 12th, 2018. And you put in the contract, the job is going to be started on April 20th. I got another job going on. I'll start at April 20th. More than 3 days have expired before the job is even started. So the contractor will know and be able to be comfortable knowing the homeowner can't cancel at this point in time. So both parties are bound by the contract on the day it started. It gets more problematic if you wait until the day the work starts and the contractor starts to do the work. And you get 1 or 2 days in and there's been materials supplied, time and effort by the contractor, and the homeowner says, cancel. Nah, I second guess, I don't want. And you go, but I did, I cancel. Then there's a whole hassle for the contractor. First of all, it's not a breach of contract because they had 3 business days to cancel, so they canceled. So second of all, then the contractor is going to have to then sue the homeowner to try and get paid the reasonable value of his services for the length of time that he was there because the homeowner canceled. In other places, meaning Long Island and New York City, they actually have local laws that require certain things. And in those places, if the contract, depending on where you are, if the contractor does work without a written contract, he can never sue to get paid. So he can never get paid. I say he, it could be she. Never can get paid because they didn't have the contract ahead of time. That's a local rules. There aren't any in upstate that I'm aware of. That we're governed by the state law, the home improvement contractor law, that does require things to be in writing. So it really goes a long way toward protecting people. The only way the 3 days can be avoided is a very limited circumstance, and that is where it is a legitimate emergency and the owner puts in his or her own writing the nature of the emergency and that they are waiving the 3 business days. And I'll use an example. January 3rd, your furnace blows up. You got to get a new furnace. You can't wait. The contractor can't wait, and the homeowner can't wait the 3 days. You'll freeze to death. The pipes will freeze. The landowner, homeowner, can put in writing, I need a new furnace because my furnace is completely shot. I'm willing to waive the 3 business days to get the new furnace in today. The contractor cannot use that little window for a new sidewalk. I need a new sidewalk put in. It's real, but I could start today. The problem is you have 3 business days to cancel. But we can waive that. Let's put down that you need your new sidewalk and you really want it today. No, it's got to be a legitimate emergency in order to qualify for that. And it also avoids the contractor just putting it at part of his form, saying, I waive the 3 business days. It has to be in the handwriting of the homeowner as to why they're waiving it. And that's the only time. So all home improvement contracts, those what we talked about, that low threshold to be a home improvement contract, it must be in writing and you have to give 3 business days to cancel. Now for homeowners, my experience has been that those 72 hours are the shortest 72 hours that you've ever experienced. It flies by. So make your decision right away. First of all, don't sign a contract unless you are completely committed to it and you know exactly what it is and you really, really want it and really, really need it. Don't sign. Don't sign thinking, what the heck, I got 3 days to cancel. Because that 3 days goes really fast. And I've had circumstances where we've received complaints that the person didn't cancel till the 4th day. because it was a weekend. We were busy. Don't go there. Decide and know ahead of time. If something should come up, we've got that 3 days as a buffer, but it goes by really fast. So don't use it that way. Another very important thing, and this is in the home improvement contractor realm, and it's a law, even in this realm, just because it's been so much of a problem over that period of time that the legislature had to step in and enact a law because it was happening so frequently. And that's in the context of when someone pays a deposit. If someone pays a deposit for a home improvement contract, those funds received for work before the work is performed must be treated as a trust fund. It must be put aside by the contractor. It cannot be put in the contractor's own pocket until he or she performs the work for which the money was paid. Contractors, this is really important. If you violate that rule, it's a crime. You can be arrested. It could be a felony to misuse deposit funds. And I'll tell you the genesis of it, and that is what was happening is contractors had to finish job A before he could get to job B. He ran out of money. He won't get paid his final draw until it's completed. But he needs money from the final draw to finish getting materials or pay labor. Well, I got that money and I can't get the payment yet because the final payment isn't here yet. And that's when I make my profit on that final payment. I'll be able to pay the last supplier bill and then make money. Well, I got this new deposit I'm getting on this job. I'll use that money, pay this money, I'll get my final payment from job A, and then I can put that deposit back. No, you can't do that. It's a felony to invade trust funds. Because what was happening was that contractors were building a house of cards. They always needed that next job to get the money to finish this job. All of a sudden that money doesn't come in, some other contractor got that job, I didn't get that deposit, I can't finish this job. So now I owe these people on job A, or what if he got a deposit and it was still in the 3 business day to cancel and they cancel the job? But I just used the money over here. Now I owe people this money. And all of a sudden they were getting farther and farther behind, and all of a sudden this job didn't get completed. This person didn't get their job started because there was no money, and it was just a complete and utter mess, and they kept digging themselves a bigger hole. Thus the law, the statute came into effect. It says you cannot use new money to finish an old job. So all funds received for work performed for later, money that you receive as a deposit for work later, must be treated as trust funds. It remains the money of the owner. It does not remain the money, although it was physically received by the contractor, it is not the contractor's money. It's trust funds that are used for the job. They must open a trust account in a bank and withdraw the money according to the draw schedule. Not sooner, according to the draw schedule. It's a protection for the homeowner, of course, but there's another entity lots of times involved, and that's subcontractors. So if it's a general contractor and they're going to do an addition, and you have an electrician, you have a plumber, you have a framer, those people get paid not by the homeowner but by the contractor. The contract is with the contractor, not with the homeowner. That's why it's called subcontractors. You have the contractor and then you have subs. The subs contract with the general contractor and they get paid by the general contractor, and the general contractor gets paid by the homeowner. So it protects so that the general contractor can't be using funds for other jobs. He's got to pay his subcontractors, and keep the money for the homeowner. So all payments received prior to substantial completion must go in escrow. It must be deposited within 5 days of receiving the funds in a bank or other similar institution in New York. Again, it remains the owner's money. And unless the contract puts the name of the bank where the money is going to be held, the contractor must notify the owner within 10 days of receiving the funds, where's the money? What bank is it in? And then the contractor doesn't have to open a separate account for every job that he or she is doing. Can have one general trust account that he or she puts the money into for deposits. You know, maybe he's got 5 jobs going at one time and he puts the deposits in. Here's the thing. The contractor has to keep records of who put money in, what money went out for what job. He has to keep a record of that. Here's the important thing. And I know contractors sometimes are craftsmen, they're artists. They're not good with the math thing, and they don't keep the good enough records. Well, if you do not keep records, appropriate records of the money that goes into that account, the law presumes that you have mishandled it. Then falling back into that felony thing. So, keep records. It's very simple. Even if you have just a ledger sheet of how much money went in, and you keep the money, and the total of let's say there's the 5 deposits. The total of the 5 deposits should add up to all 5 people's payment to you. And then if you take out $500 because you got lumber on job 1, you go to their ledger and you put minus $500 for lumber, and then net it out, and and the balances will all balance. Again, if you don't do that and it's all a mess, it's presumed to have been mishandled in violation of the law. You cannot withdraw, again, the record keeping thing, you cannot withdraw more money for a job than what was paid to you by job 1. Say they gave you $1,000, you just put in, $2,000. You got 5 deposits in the trust account, no big deal. You take out $2,000 out of the trust account, you just broke the law. You cannot withdraw excess of the amount that has been paid by the one consumer you're using the money for. Again, it's a crime. These are the types of things that have to be in the home improvement contract itself. There are violations if you don't meet those standards. Let's say it's something small. We'll call it a technical violation, not a major violation. And the technical violation is that you forgot to put your address. The contractor forgot to put their address on the contract. A technical violation of the contract law calls for a fine of $100. That can start eating into the profit for that. Hit all the things that are required. Fines can be up to $2,500 per contract, so if there's multiple violations. This is in addition to any restitution that might be owed to the homeowner. Our office, myself included, I have brought many cases against home improvement contractors who violated the home improvement contractor law. Lots of times it's there might be illegal and deceptive business practices on top of that, but almost all the time, we can find violations in the home improvement contractor law. It's probably more the exception that when I get a complaint in, and I'll get a complaint against usually bad contractors. I don't get a lot of complaints against good contractors. I just don't. But the bad contractors we get complaints about. And I can't tell you the number of times that in percentage-wise, how much those complaints include violations of the home improvement contractor law because the contractor is not including the provisions that are required. So it's incumbent upon the contractor. It's not incumbent on the homeowner. It's incumbent on the contractor. Put it in writing. It's got to be in writing with all these specific terms. Now, this is one area where we do receive a lot of complaints. We do receive a lot of home improvement contractor complaints. I'm sure it's hard to be absolute, but I can almost guarantee you that 2 weeks, I used to say 1 week, but I'll say 2 weeks, doesn't go by, especially during the warmer months when things are happening, that our office does not receive a complaint about a contractor. Yeah, that happens all the time. A lot of them can be resolved because I'm not saying that all are this horrible contractor that rips people off. It could be a legitimate, hardworking, good contractor, but they had a communication problem with the homeowner, which, falling back to what I started to talk about, I like to reiterate these things. If they had had a full contract that detailed everything, there wouldn't have been a miscommunication. It would have, they could just pull out the paper and resolve, it'll be resolved in writing. So under the Home Improvement Contractor Law, the Attorney General's office, we have jurisdiction to sue contractors. We can't sue on behalf of one homeowner because we don't represent individuals, so the homeowner could go to their own attorney and sue the contractor. But our office has jurisdiction where we can show a pattern of repeated and persistent illegal, fraudulent, deceptive conduct. Could be deceptive, could be fraudulent. The illegal part, violation of the Home Improvement Contractor Law. If we have repeated violations of the Home Improvement Contractor Law, that gives our office jurisdiction to pursue. And we do it all the time. I encourage anyone, go to the Attorney General's website, ag.ny.gov, and you will see the press releases that we issue. And there are so many different contractor type situations that our office has been involved with throughout the state. So it is a prime area where scam artists do come. I have yearly get people complaining to us about people going through neighborhoods offering to do home improvement work, driveways, roof repairs, any other landscaping kind of things, where they're knocking on the door, hey, I see your driveway's a mess. I've got some extra blacktop in the back of the truck. I can give you a great deal. And they don't provide written contracts. Consumer doesn't know how much it is. They only want a specific amount of work done, but the contractor then does the whole driveway and comes back. They thought it was going to be a $500 job. They get a bill for $6,500 because they didn't get it in writing. Turns out that it is a horribly done job for 3 times the price of what a reputable contractor would have done, but all of a sudden they feel stuck that they have to pay it. So there are some rules of thumb that people really need to understand and know going in. Some words of advice. First and foremost, we're always advocating out here at Cornell Cooperative Extension, whenever I come out each month. You probably heard me say this 1,000,000 times for the 20 years I've been doing this. Know what you want done. Don't let somebody convince you what you want done. Know, first of all, what you need done. Second of all, what do you want done? Oftentimes those two don't mesh, what you need and what you want. Our wants are sometimes much grander than what our needs are. But have that resolved before you start going to a contractor to get estimates for the job. Make a thorough list of what you need to have done. It helps you to be able to negotiate with the contractor. And the written list helps to focus you so that you don't get all this extraneous stuff that you may not be able to do. I can use an example of myself, which I often do, is we have a beautiful deck that we had installed. It seems like yesterday, but it was probably 10 years ago that we put a deck on the back of our house. Gorgeous, really nice. It's actually built around a tree that we really like, so it's really nice that incorporates that whole thing. But the grand scheme originally was even grander than this. There was going to be another deck that was kind of a step down. So we kind of thought about that, and we went to contractors, and we went, how expensive the whole project was going to be. So we were able to pare it back, and we decided exactly what it was that we want. So we kind of had a want, but we had the need. You know, we wanted to have a place to socialize with family and friends out back, and so we kind of knew what we needed, and it would be really nice to have this other stuff. But we were able to figure out that was a want, not necessarily a need, especially when we saw the price. So when we were talking to contractors, we knew exactly what was going on, and they knew what they had to do, and we knew what was going to have to be done. It worked out great. Love it. So another thing that people should be aware of is what permits are needed. Oftentimes we'll rely on our contractor. Oh yeah, you just go out and get and they may not get it. So if it's something, not everything that is done needs to have a permit, but some things do. Depending on your municipality, all you have to do is call your town building inspector and let them know. Say, I'm putting a deck on the back of our house. Do we need a building permit? And he or she will say, yeah, you do. I'm putting a new roof on my house. It's just replacing the old one. Do I need a permit? They may say, no, you don't. Then you know. But when the contractor comes to you and says, oh yeah, we can do that deck, and you don't put in the contract, contractor will be responsible for obtaining permits. And all of a sudden, you have this new deck on the back of your house. The code enforcement officer shows up and says, you didn't get a permit for that. Rip it out. Like, oh my gosh. It's usually, get the permit. But in a lot of instances, it won't be too much of a big deal as long as there's no problems. What if that deck was built within, was big enough that the municipality has zoning, you can't build anything within 10 feet of the side property line, and it's 5 feet into the property line, or near the property line, you're in violation of the zoning. And you have to get a variance to allow that to happen. And if you don't have a board, the zoning board that you go in front of for a variance, and they say no, guess what happens? The deck has to come down. And I actually had that situation. It was many, many years ago. I was in private practice, and my partner and I were representing a homeowner who decided they wanted a side staircase to their house. And they didn't care what the town said or anything. It's just, I'm going to have this built because I want it. Code enforcement, because a neighbor, I think, probably complained, said that stairwell is a foot from the property line. It's supposed to be 5-10 feet away. I don't like it there. I want it down. And so the code enforcement officer comes by and says, you didn't get a permit. He said, well, you know, I'll come in and sign one out. She says, well, no, it's within this side setback. If you had come in for a permit, we would have been able to tell you at that time, whoa, wait a second. Before you go to the expense of putting that thing in, you're going to have to go to the zoning board and get the okay. Once the zoning board, if they say it's okay, then you can do it. This particular person said, well, you know, I didn't do that. I'm going to the zoning board. Zoning board said, can't do it. And the code enforcement officer came back and said, that's coming down, or we're going to start citing you and bring you in. They had to tear it down after spending that kind of money. Know if you need a permit, contact your code enforcement officer. They'll tell you. You don't necessarily have to do the application. You could, or at least it will flag something ahead of time, and then you can have in the contract. Contractor will be responsible for getting the permit. Boom. Yes, question.
If it's in the contract, the contractor will be responsible for that.
If it's in the contract and the contractor is supposed to be responsible, and it doesn't happen, then you have a claim against your contractor. So if the contractor's, you know, let's say it's a $5,000 staircase, you can say, I get my $5,000 back because you breached the contract. And that's you're right. Because what happens, it may have to still come down. Because the contractor is you. I mean, you contracted with the contractor, so you're one entity. The municipality is a different entity, so your deal with the contractor is separate than the municipality. So you got to Do it ahead of time. And then if you know that, beforehand you can say to the contractor, oh, hold on. Before you dig into the ground to put the footers in, did you get the permit? No, I'll take care of it tomorrow. Stop. Do not do anything. I want to see the permit before you start digging. And saves you. Next question.
I didn't know if you were going to answer questions at the end because I wanted to address, so the contract, so I run a program with the energy. Okay, should I hold it to the end then?
If you want to ask a question now or at the end, it doesn't matter.
So, I run a program called the Energy Efficiency Program. So I wanted to know if you could address home improvement contracts through subsidies, like the weatherization.
So home improvement contracts with subsidies available, energy efficiency programs, they're it's kind of two different things in that we're just talking about and a lot of times energy efficiency is a funding source. You know, there's somebody gets paid a stipend to put solar on their house or something like that. The payment of the contractor or the payment of the homeowner is separate. The funding source is separate.
Right.
So the rules are still the same. The contractor and the homeowner have to have this agreement. If it's an outside entity that does solar installations and stuff like that, solar installation would be a home improvement contract. So it has to be in writing. All the terms have to be in writing, and the parties abide by the specific terms. It's we don't have to make it any more complicated than it actually is, in the sense that can, especially for a homeowner that isn't aware of it, can be a complicated kind of contract, but the fact still remains. It's got to be a written contract. It's got to have the date when the work is going to be started and be substantially completed. It has to have the terms of it. If there's subsidies and things like that going on over a course of a period of time, that should be in the contract. But again, that would be separate than the home improvement portion of it.
Okay.
Other things that we should be aware of, and that is, what do good consumers do? Good consumers investigate. Good consumers shop around. Get estimates from others. Know what's the best. Find references so that you know people who have had good experiences with the contractor before. Look around at multiple contracts, get quoted prices for what you need to have done. Find out the timeline that can be started and when it can be finished. Get references and check them. Ask your friend. Don't rely on I know we're all becoming really comfortable with the internet. Don't rely on just the references and the things that are on the internet. We don't know who posted those things, like Yelp and others. Investigate. Find out who this contractor did work for. Contact them. Ask them about their experience. What did you get? Did you have any issues with them? How'd it go? Get proof of insurance. Don't rely on a contractor that says to you, yeah, I have insurance. Because there's so many different insurances that you may not know what insurance he or she is talking about. What insurance do you want them to have? Well, lots of times you want them to have workers' compensation insurance, so if their employees are hurt, they're covered by that workers' compensation policy. But sometimes we aren't thinking of that sort of thing. We want to know that if they don't finish or if they screw up and it causes damage to my house, that's liability insurance. You want to make sure that they have insurance covering this job, if that's what you want. And that if they mess up, there's a policy to cover that. And what you do is you want them to have a liability policy covering this job. You want to be named in that policy as an additional insured. And ask for them to give you it's called a binder. It's a one-page thing with your name attached to it with an insurance company showing that they have coverage and that if something goes wrong, you're covered. If a license is required, now, in New York, upstate New York, our areas, anywhere that I work in, my 8-county region, which would include Tompkins County, there are no requirements for a general contractor to be licensed. There are specific trades that require licenses, plumbing, electrician, those sorts of things. But a general, just the general contractor, there are no set licenses. So when a contractor says to you, like you want to put an addition on, he says, I'm fully licensed. I would have a siren going off in my head saying, the next question is, what licenses do you have? Oh, I'm fully licensed. Licensed for what? Because there are no licenses. The thing I usually say is that in order to be a qualified contractor in our areas in upstate, all you have to do is afford that magnetic sign that you stick on the side of your pickup truck that says Joe's Home Repair. There's no licensing requirements. If they're an electrician, the municipality governs electrical contractors. And if you want to check, you just check and see if they're licensed to do plumbing or electric or whatever it is. So that's in other, Long Island, New York City, they actually do have licensing of home improvement contractors, but we don't up here. There's such a concentrated living down there, smaller lots, the big open spaces and a lot of people in a small geographic region. They actually because of home improvement work that's done, there's enough home improvement contractors, enough jobs going on that with the cost of getting these licenses and stuff, they have to pay a fee to get a license. They actually can support a governmental infrastructure to oversee it. There's not enough, I think that primarily there's not enough of that going on that's really going to support a whole infrastructure, employees and inspectors. I'll just use an example. I went to a conference many years ago when I was with the Attorney General's office on home improvement contractors and stuff, and it was down, I can't remember where we went. I think it was in New York City that I was down there. And they were talking about this whole thing about how they have such an infrastructure like in New York City that they have inspectors that drive around the city and look to see, and if there's, the example that was used for me, if there's a van that's out in front of say a high-rise or something in Manhattan, and they see Joe's Home Improvement, Jones Construction, and they can see that it's involving a residential structure, maybe condos or co-ops or whatever, they'll get on their phone and they'll call back to the office and say, hey, you got a Joe's Construction listed as a licensed contractor? And they'll say, nope, they will tow the truck. And when Joe wants to get his truck, he has to go pay the fine for the tow. They have to pay for the tow, pay the fine, and then pay the licensing fee to be a contractor in order to do that. They will just take them because they have the infrastructure. We don't. I don't think that that's necessarily problematic in that if we do the good consumer thing and protect ourselves, we'll be okay. So
is there a difference between licenses and certification?
Yes, there's a difference between licensing and certification. They could be certified to do something like you indicated, like energy efficiency. There may be certifications there, but that's not a license to do something by the municipality. Another thing, as far as we as consumers in home improvement contracts, never pay the full price up front. Most reputable contractors have credit with their supply houses and can wait until the end of the job, or can take periodic payments throughout the course of the job, to where it should be set up that the consumer, the homeowner, is always ahead. So let's say it's a bigger project and there is a contract that calls for a draw schedule. After we have this done, and this done, and it may equate to like 30% it's done, you have to pay 10%. You're still 20% in the good. And you always want to stay ahead. You run into problems, I see that's a huge problem, is when the contractor is ahead of the consumer. So they pay 50% down and no work has been started yet. My saying is the contractor's incentive to finish the job is in reverse proportion to the amount of money they've been paid in percentage. So, don't pay, if the contractor asks for all the money up front, that's telling me something. It's telling me you can't front the money for this job. You have to pay cash because you don't have credit with your suppliers. That's a red flag right there. Always stay ahead. Establish the payment schedule, stick to it. Contractor comes to you and say, look, I know that we had to get the framing finished in order to get that 50% draw. We're not quite there yet. Can you give me another $5,000? I'm sorry. We gotta go by what our contract is. I know that we're, as homeowners, saying, I got to get this job done. And if I give them that money, then the job, well, you know that the person's behind. And so you already got red flags that are starting to wave. Do you want to dig that hole deeper? So never pay up front everything. Withhold the final payment until all the work is completed, all the inspections have been done, and if you require a permit, usually the permit ends, the permitting ends when the inspector comes out and inspects and makes sure that it was done according to what was applied for. All the electrical inspections have to be done periodically before they close up the walls, because then you run the risk of having to rip walls open because the inspections weren't done. Make sure all that stuff's done. Make sure the certificate of occupancy, that's what the building code office will issue at the end, a certificate of occupancy. Make sure that's been issued before you make that final payment. Put everything in writing, as we talked about before. Know where your payments are going. Never do business with a contractor who is unwilling to abide by any of these conditions. Oh, we can worry about something in writing later. No. That's when you have the most negotiation power, is before you've given them any money. Use that to your advantage. Be a good consumer. Use that to your advantage. If you have a problem with a contractor, or if you have a problem with any other business for that matter, you can contact our office, the New York State Attorney General's office. We mediate consumer complaints, so you can file a complaint with our office and we will try to mediate a resolution. I would encourage you first, talk to the contractor. At the very least, figure out what the problem actually is so you can narrow down, rather than, I have this terrible complaint against the contractor, didn't do what he was supposed to be doing. It's so much easier when someone files a complaint with their office and almost have a checklist. This isn't done. Here's a copy of our contract. This item is not completed. This item is not completed. Then we send it to the contractor, and then everybody's focused. We know what the particular issues is, rather than, he didn't finish the job. Well, in what respects? And it makes it a lot easier and can help in resolving the dispute. But if anyone has a question related to a consumer versus a business, homeowner versus a contractor, or any other business, they can contact our office. We have a mediation staff. We have a consumer representative, interns frequently, in our office that can help resolve those questions, or at least give you some guidance as to where you might go. If anybody has any questions about home improvement contracting, I'd be glad to answer those now. If not, thank you all for joining us. Please come again. Those of you on TV watching us, come, join us. We're here the second Thursday of every month at Cornell Cooperative Extension on Willow Avenue in Ithaca. We're here from 11 in the morning, and I'm here till 1 unless nobody shows up, and then I end up leaving early, but I try not to and wait around. If you have unrelated topic, after we're done doing this program, I'm still here. You all disappear out on TV land, but I'm still here. And people can come up and ask me questions, consumer-related questions, and I can give you some guidance how to proceed. Otherwise, thank you for joining us today, and hopefully we will see you again at some event that we have at Cornell Cooperative Extension. Thank you.